you, everybody, for coming to the College Football Betting with Aaron Torres YouTube channel. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, click that subscribe button. It helps our channel grow. It helps our audience grow. I appreciate it more than you know, as we're talking college football on this channel year-round. Appreciate your support. Click that subscribe button. Our college football preseason content rolls on here on the College Football Betting YouTube channel and podcast. As I've told you, we're previewing all the big teams. By the way, for those of you who aren't so much into the SEC, we're going to be getting to the Big Ten soon. Ohio State, Michigan, the fascinating USC Trojans, Oregon, on and on. But today, our focus is the Auburn Tigers, okay? And so Auburn is clearly one of the most intriguing teams in college football, coming off a disappointing 5-7 season, kind of entering a make-or-break year for Hugh Freeze, kind of entering a make-or-break year for their new quarterback, Jackson Arnold. So let's go ahead and dive in. First of all, and I'll say this, I think this is important. This is going to sound like me just, terrorizing Auburn by going back through last year. But I think it's important context on how to look at this season. Because, yes, Auburn went 5-7, but they did have the nice win late against A&M. And if you actually go back with a fine-tooth comb and look at those losses, so many of those losses could have been wins. It started in week 2 against Cal. You lose 21-14 at home. Peyton Thorne, listen, this isn't a bash Peyton Thorne thing, but 4 interceptions in that game. You lose at home. That was the game, I believe, where Hugh Freeze said, we got to stop throwing the ball to the other team. I'm sorry, in the NIL, I think it was actually later. I think it was maybe the Arkansas game. But I bring it up because I'm sorry. In the NIL era, it's okay if a quarterback throws 4 interceptions, it's okay to be like, yeah, if we threw 2, we probably don't lose. Anyway, 4 interceptions, you lose by a touchdown to Cal. Few weeks later, you play Arkansas, okay? In that game, you had over 100 more yards. You had more than 100 yards of total offense, more than Arkansas, but you have 4 turnovers, including 3 interceptions by Hank Brown. Remember, he was starting at that point. You lose that game. So 8 combined turnovers against Cal and Arkansas. Arkansas, you have 100 more yards of total offense. You lose that game. Then you play Oklahoma. You are up, how about this? 21-10 with 9 minutes to go. You lose that one, in large part thanks to a Peyton Thorne pick 6. And then later on in the year, you're up 17-3 against Missouri, and you lose that one, 21-17. So this isn't making excuses for Hugh Freeze. If you want to say that some of it is on him, play calling, this, that, not finding the right quarterback, okay, I'm not going to fight you. What I am going to say, though, is if you just take care of the ball a little bit better, at minimum, you're 6-6. At minimum, you're going to a bowl game. At minimum, you maybe have a little bit of momentum going into this year. Oh, by the way, that's at worst. At best, you're like 8-4. I mean, in theory, it could have been 9-3. I mean, you look at the losses that Auburn had last year, the only ones that you would qualify as, listen, you lose to Vandy. That's bad. I get it. But Georgia, you played tough, and they just had more dudes than you. Alabama, you lose by 2 scores. But the bottom line is, the only point I'm trying to make, this easily could have been a 7-5 year, maybe 8-4. It was 5-7. So now, to quote the famous movie Wedding Crashers, no excuses, play like a champion. By the way, if you are an Auburn believer, make sure to follow our Twitter account, Torres on Auburn, all of my Auburn coverage, more recruiting, this, that, the other thing. Producer Matt, former Auburn alum, he's not a former Auburn alum, he is an Auburn alum, helps me run it. Torres on Auburn on Twitter for all your late breaking news. Okay, let's get to this season. Let's get to the season ahead. Let's start with the offense. But even before we get to the offense, if you want a metaphor for how turnovers impacted this team and how they impacted the season, Auburn last year on offense, 29th nationally in total offense. Okay, sounds good, right? 71st at scoring. That tells you what you need to know. When you have a top 30 offense and you're 71st in scoring, that means there's something lost in translation, and you're probably giving the ball away too much, which is exactly what happened, which is why they went into the transfer portal. And I'll say this, I am a Jackson Arnold truther. Okay. And what do I mean by Jackson Arnold truther? What do I mean by that? What I mean is, in the same way that I think you have to look at Auburn's season with a fine-tooth comb from a year ago, I think you have to look at Jackson Arnold's as well. And I think it's easy to blame him for everything. But the truth of the matter with Jackson Arnold is pretty straightforward, is that he went into a situation behind an entirely new offensive line. His entire receiving core basically got hurt. Nick Anderson, Andrell Anthony, Jaleel Farouk, all these guys got hurt. But he was the fall guy. By the way, the OC got fired, but he was the fall guy. It was all his fault. By the way, no disrespect to Michael Hawkins, who replaced him at times last year, but he was not much better. And I actually give Jackson Arnold so much credit because late in the season, first of all, he gets that win against Bama. But this dude took so many hits, got beat up so bad, and I don't think we have a fair conversation about him. And I actually came away last year impressed by him, not disappointed, because he dealt with so much crap behind the scenes. And by the way, I think Brent Venables was asked about this at media days. He was asked about Jackson Arnold, who, of course, we'll get to the schedule momentarily. But I bring it up because even Brent Venables was like, dude, I think Jackson is better than he showed last year. So we'll see what happens. But let's get to the offense. Jackson Arnold is obviously the headliner, is probably the most important piece on this team. And if this team is going to have success, it's going to start with him admittedly being better than he was. 62% completion percentage, 1,400 passing yards, 12 TDs, 3 interceptions. Again, he wasn't terrible, but when you were coming off a 10-win season with Dillon Gabriel, he wasn't Dillon Gabriel, and he took the fall. Good news is he does not have to do it alone. First of all, run game, yes, you lose Jarquez Hunter, but you do bring back some interesting pieces. Damari Alston, 276 yards, 5.5 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. Jeremiah Cobb, a former highly ranked recruit, 4.5 yards per carry on 29 carries a season ago. By the way, for you Auburn fans who do not know much about me, I am a UConn alum. I am a fan of Darrell Robinson, the transfer from UConn, who had 8 rushing touchdowns, 7 yards per carry last year. So I like the running backs. And boy, oh boy, do I love the wide receivers. You could see there Cam Coleman. I know it was up and down. A lot of it was the quarterback play, but finished strong, 39 catches, 8 touchdowns, 16 yards per catch. And I think he's obviously due for a breakout season, 22 catches, 6 TDs a season ago. And then the big name that out of the portal, Eric Singleton, the transfer from Georgia Tech. Some believe he was the best transfer available. 56 catches, 756 yards, 3 touchdowns last season. 48 catches and 714 yards in 2023. Worth noting a couple other things on the offense. The second leading returner as we record here, Malcolm Simmons, is in some legal trouble. Stuff is always subject to change. To give you some context, we are recording right after he got into legal trouble, so we may have a resolution by the time you listen to this. And I also think it's worth noting, not only for Jackson Arnold, but for the run game as well, O-line has 2 starters back, but also brought in 2 of the best transfers in the country. Xavier Chaplin comes in from Virginia Tech, a 2-year starter with the Hokies, one of the most coveted offensive linemen in the portal. Mason Murphy, a starter from USC as well. Defensively, Auburn was actually pretty good. And again, this speaks to, I don't want to make this an anti-Peyton Thorne or anti-Hank Brown thing, but it's like, think about this. As I said, Auburn, a top 30 offense in all of college football. Well, guess what? They were also a top 30 total defense in college football. The problem was they could not stop giving the ball away. And frankly, in defense of, Peyton Thorne, if such a thing exists, they also probably didn't force enough turnovers on the defensive side of the ball. Overall, they were solid, but not great. Overall, this was a team that, again, top 30-ish nationally in total offense, 21 points per game allowed, but they did only force 13 turnovers, which was 15 out of 16 SEC teams. So you want to force more turnovers, obviously, especially when you're turning the ball over as much as you are. In terms of names to know, listen, it all starts with Keldrick Faulk, projected first-round pick in pretty much any credible 2026 mock draft. 11 TFLs, 7 sacks, 7 QB hurries a season ago. He is a legitimate star along that defensive line. Beyond just him, though, there's a lot of talent outside of him on that offensive line. Malik Blockton comes back. Kayron Crawford comes back. And then I think it's worth noting, Hugh Freeze, as we record, and again, stuff is always subject to change, taking a lot of heat for his 2026 recruiting. 2025, he had a top 10 class. And guess where a couple of the best players in that class came from? They were on the defensive line. Think that's kind of important. Think that's kind of worth noting. Malik Autry, Jared Smith, both top 100 prospects. Jordan Crawford, Antonio Coleman, both high 4 stars. Bring it up because they add depth. You're not expecting them to be great, but I think that defensive line is pretty underrated. I think the defense in general is underrated. Outside of the defensive line, you have the linebacker core led by DeMarcus Riddick, another young player, another reason that I think it's a little dumb to be criticizing Hugh Freeze's 2026 recruiting. Yeah, because they loaded up in 24 and 25. Well, DeMarcus Riddick was a member of the All-SEC freshman team, 27 tackles a season ago, 17 solo tackles. He was phenomenal as a true freshman a year ago. Also, in addition to him, you have a couple other interesting pieces, especially in the secondary. Lee at cornerback, 32 tackles, 7 PBUs, 2 INTs. Jay Crawford, 15 tackles, 7 PBUs, 1 INT. Sylvester Smith had an interception as well, and Caleb Harris with 48 tackles. Secondary has a lot of returning talent, as does the defensive line. All right, let's get to the schedule. It's interesting because remember, last year, everybody was so excited about Auburn because they had so many games at home to open the season. This year, it's kind of the exact opposite, right? You obviously open Friday night at Baylor. We all know what's at stake in that game. Baylor, to its credit, 8-5 last year. They finished on a 6-game winning streak, 14 starters back. That doesn't matter to Auburn. You cannot lose that game if you're Hugh Freeze. You just can't. From there, you obviously have 2 bye games, and then it gets interesting. I think you can argue the Oklahoma game from a narrative perspective, SEC opener for both Oklahoma and Auburn, as interesting of a game for both teams as you can have. Because what I would say is the loser of that game, it's hard to imagine them having the season that you hope to have if you lose that game. Now, I think Oklahoma's schedule is a little bit tougher than Auburn's. But again, Auburn opens at Baylor. You better win that one. At Oklahoma and then at Texas A&M to open SEC play. You then get Georgia at home out of the bye. You get Missouri at home. Again, a team that you basically had beat in Columbia last year, could not make it happen. Arkansas, you had beat as well. And really what's worth noting is essentially between the Georgia game and the Alabama game, you have wins baked into that schedule. Again, like I said, Missouri at home, they should take a step back, lost a lot of talent. Arkansas, kind of a make or break year, for Sam Pittman. I think it's worth noting. I mean, there's a possibility that with this Arkansas schedule, Sam Pittman might not even be there by the time Arkansas plays. Make or break year for Mark Stoops. You got to beat Mark Stoops in Kentucky at home. Vandy, listen, we talked about this on the Aaron Torres pod. Diego Pavia, I understand the history with Auburn, okay? So I'm not trying to say that, whatever. Auburn fans, just beat Diego Pavia. I'm kind of over Diego Pavia. I'm over Diego Pavia. I don't think he's that good. And then you close, obviously, in the Iron Bowl at home. So it's worth noting. I think what's interesting about this schedule to me is a couple things. First of all, on a negative note, your first 3 games against Power 4 teams are on the road at Baylor, at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M. You then from there have Georgia, and then you close with Bama. But in between, there are 4 straight games that you really should win, which brings us to the over-under win total. Over-under win total, according to DraftKings Sportsbook, it's 7.5. I like the over. I really do. Listen, I think it's common sense. And by the way, maybe things completely go sideways. Maybe Hugh Freeze can't handle, the media pressure. Obviously, by the way, it's worth noting like Hugh Freeze is going through, a medical situation right now. But I think what we would also say is if he's healthy enough to, report to work every day, then he's also got to do the job. And so I only bring it up because I like Auburn with that over 7.5, right? Because listen, I mean, just look at that schedule. Matt, pop up the schedule again when you can. Okay. First of all, Georgia and Alabama at home. Even Kirby Smart has acknowledged, like, Jordan-Hare Stadium is one of the toughest places in America to play, and Oklahoma and Texas A&M on the road. Even if you were to lose all 4 of those games, 8-4 should still be in play. So basically, you can lose to Georgia, you can lose to Bama. You got to go 1-2 at Baylor, at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M. You win any of those games, you should hit the over of 7.5. So I could go on and on. I'm not ready to give up on this program yet. I know Hugh Freeze is an easy punching bag. I know a lot of people don't like him. I know Lane Kiffin's poking at him. I know he played a lot of golf this summer. By the way, all these guys play a lot of golf. It's just that he is the one that's coming off a disappointing 5-7 season. People don't like him anyway. And again, part of the reason that the 2025 recruiting was a little bit slow, or 2026 recruiting was slow, was because they took huge classes in 2024 and 2025. So we'll see what happens. I'm a Jackson Arnold truther. I believe in Auburn. I like the over of 7.5. That is an official best bet. When I get to Vegas, I'm going to put a little money on that. Tell you what, I think that's it for this episode of College Football Betting with Aaron Torres. First of all, make sure you're following our Torres on Auburn account, Torres on Auburn on Twitter. All your late-breaking Auburn news, everything you need to know. Football, basketball, recruiting, Olympic sports, on and on. So make sure you're following there on Twitter if you are, in fact, on Twitter. You can also find us on the College Football Betting Pod. Make sure you're subscribed onto the YouTube channel. YouTube, just search College Football Betting with Aaron Torres. By the way, find the Aaron Torres pod as well. We would appreciate you joining us there 3-4 times a week when we record. And of course, College Football Betting with Aaron Torres. You can find us there as well. All right. I think that's it for this episode of College Football Betting. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. We appreciate your support. Thank you for listening. And we'll be back tomorrow. Who will we be with? It's a mystery. Stay tuned. Could be anybody. Maybe it's your favorite team. Maybe it's not your favorite team. Maybe we'll find out. College Football Betting, Aaron Torres.